Chapter 9. We Need to Talk. Talek did not move, not because he was frozen. He had disciplined that failure out of himself decades ago, but because movement now felt like an admission. Across the desk, the human president sat with his hands loosely folded, posture relaxed in a way that resisted interpretation. Supreme confidence, perhaps, or complete indifference. Neither option was acceptable. Talek had built a career on reading rooms. He measured danger in posture, intent in pacing, threat in who remained silent when others spoke. He understood how power announced itself, through guards, through ritual, through layered displays meant to remind everyone present where violence ultimately lived. This was none of that. The man across from him had bypassed the council capital's security lattice, a system Talek himself had approved line by line, entered a private study that had never once been breached, and taken a seat as though this were a scheduled meeting delayed by minutes rather than impossibility. No guards, no escorts, no ceremony. That unsettled Talek more than any show of force could have. Silence held between them, thick but controlled. The air recyclers whispered softly. Outside the tall windows, traffic lanes curved across the Capitol skyline, orderly and disinterested in the crisis unfolding above them. Talek spoke at last carefully. "You sit," he said, "in the private study of a high-ranking council member, without protection, without leverage. Either you are reckless, or I no longer understand the nature of power." Hawthorne met his eyes without hurry. "Power changes shape when it works," he said. Nothing more. Talek felt the words settle, not as rebuttal, not as deflection, but as correction. His gaze drifted, almost involuntarily, to the corner of the desk. The draft, still hovering there, faint, half-translucent, the product of a long night and a quiet decision finally crossing a private line. Careful language, conservative contingencies. The kind of planning done by someone who understood violence well enough to want it executed cleanly. He had not dismissed it. He had assumed he still had time. Hawthorne's eyes followed Talek's glance, then returned to him. Talek dismissed the projection with a sharp gesture. The empty air where it had been felt suddenly dense, as though something vital had just been removed. "You violate the most secure capital in the quadrant," Talek said carefully. "You enter my private chambers without invitation. You sit." His eyes flicked briefly to the chair Hawthorne occupied. "How precisely do you believe this conversation proceeds?" "Honestly," he said, "this tends to go better if we skip the part where you pretend you weren't drafting a plan to kill me." Talek did not respond. Hawthorne's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "It's one of the cleaner drafts I've seen," he continued. "Efficient, conservative. You favor outcomes over spectacle." He complimented Talek, a possible arbiter of his destruction, and treated this as if it wasn't a high-stakes political game. But it wasn't a game. The human knew what he was doing. Talek's spine stiffened despite himself. He studied the man across from him again, and the realization struck, not gradually, but with surgical clarity. This was not interruption. This was interdiction. The timing had been exact, the arrival precise, the demeanor entirely unconcerned with escalation. The president had not come because a threat had been made. He had come because the threat was forming. The draft had not crossed channels, had not triggered audits, had not been finalized, transmitted, or shared. It had existed only here, half-written, half-thought, and the human president had already been seated across from him. Talek felt something colder than fear slide into place. Not panic, calculation. Either humanity's intelligence reached into the council like a surgeon's hand, or they had been watching him long enough to know exactly when his thinking crossed a certain threshold. Neither possibility was survivable. Talek raised his eyes to Hawthorne again. "How long," he asked carefully, "have you known what was on that screen?" Hawthorne did not shift in his chair. "Long enough," he said. That answer was worse than any explanation. Talek felt the room recede, not physically, but conceptually. The study did not feel breached, it felt revocable. This was not intrusion. This was surveillance with judgment attached. And Talek's mind went somewhere dangerous then. Why come in person? Not a message, not intermediaries, not force. Talek had authorized removals executed without the architects ever knowing they had been seen. He understood how elimination was done when secrecy mattered. If Hawthorne had been here to kill him, Talek would never have known the meeting occurred. Which meant the visit was the last step before that decision. "You didn't come to warn me," Talek said quietly. Hawthorne did not deny it. "You came to decide whether I needed to be dealt with." For the first time, Hawthorne's expression changed, not hardening, not softening, acknowledging. "Close," he said. The word landed harder than agreement. This was assessment, continuation under review. Talek drew a slow breath. "Then tell me," he said, "what stopped you?" "You didn't come to bargain." Still nothing. Talek's voice remained steady through training alone. "You came to decide whether I needed to be dealt with." For the first time, Hawthorne's expression changed, not hardening, not softening, acknowledging. "Close," he said. The word landed harder than agreement. This was assessment, continuation under review. Talek drew a slow breath. "Then tell me," he said, "what stopped you?" Hawthorne studied him for a long moment. "Intent," he said at last. "You crossed into it. Not action, not execution, but the moment where violence stopped being abstract." He gestured faintly, not toward the desk, but toward Talek himself. "We monitor actions all the time," Hawthorne continued. "Intent is rarer, more dangerous. It's where futures begin." Talek felt the weight of that settle. Humanity had not intervened because it feared him. They had intervened because they did not permit tools like that to finish assembling. That realization loosened others that had been pressing at the edges of his thoughts. The fleets, docked at human stations, not threatened, repaired, upgraded, resupplied, until boundaries were tested, then conditions applied, training offered freely, discipline enforced quietly. Ships that learned stayed modern. Ships that abused kindness stayed obsolete. The food, aid convoys delivering rations aboard foreign hulls without banners, without speeches. Chocolate sent not to admirals, but to a grandmother on Vadris assembling a union node by hand. The nodes, schematics released without restriction. Weaponizable infrastructure distributed like literacy. Communications rebuilt not as command chains, but as shared participation. Union Hall, a galaxy-wide network operational before the Council had agreed on terminology. Civilians building, linking, organizing without authorization. And the children. Alien children wearing human banners like toys, laughing, unafraid. And the human president himself traveling from planet to planet, meeting civilians and interacting with them directly. Taken together, the shape became unmistakable. This was not persuasion, this was enlistment. The Council did not need to be destroyed. It needed to be managed, improved. "You're not recruiting allies," Talek said slowly. "You're mobilizing." Hawthorne didn't deny it. "Every formation needs a point," he said, "something it's willing to place out front where impact happens first." Talek felt the last piece click into place. Humans have been sharpening the galaxy like a blade, and you're the tip of the spear." "Yes," Hawthorne said. The room felt smaller. Talek felt, for the first time since taking office, like a man who had mistaken a warehouse for a command post. He had believed himself a participant in history, a steward, a leader. He was none of that, at least not compared to humanity. They were never on the same level, and probably never would be. Humans had barely acknowledged the Council's authority. No, they never acknowledged the Council's authority. They were inventory, a tool to be used in the future, improved when possible. And Hawthorne's visit to Talek was humans cleaning some debris off of their sword before it rotted. Corrective action, maintenance. He met Hawthorne's gaze again, older now by hours if not years. A small chime grabbed Hawthorne's attention. His demeanor changed instantly. "What?" Talek demanded. Hawthorne's gaze snapped back to him. "The purge just crossed the boundary of the Milky Way," he said. "First recorded incursion. It has chosen a vector." Talek's chest went tight. "Where?" he asked. Hawthorne stared blankly at Talek, as if reading information being fed directly to his pupils. He refocused on Talek. "Varia," Hawthorne said. Talek knew it only vaguely, a secondary trade hub on the quiet edge of a mid-arm spur. Not strategic, not famous, populated. "There are millions of people there," Talek said. "Confirmed council members, registered worlds." "Yes," Hawthorne said, "which means this is no longer a theoretical problem for your colleagues to posture over." He stood up. "We already have SDF in range. Union field nodes nearby are generating enough resonance to slow the impact if they synchronize." Talek's mind raced through timelines, fleet positions, treaties, excuses. "You expect us to let you handle this alone?" he asked. "I expect nothing," Hawthorne said. "Expectation is a luxury we burned out of ourselves a long time ago. But I am telling you this, if the Council wants even a fragment of moral authority left when this is over, it will send ships to help evacuate that system. Now." He rested his fingertips lightly on the desk, leaning in just enough to make sure Talek saw the seriousness in his eyes. "You asked once what role the Council has left," Hawthorne said. "Here is one. Help save lives, your people, your citizens, not by passing resolutions, by moving hulls." Talek's mind raced ahead, already computing response windows. "How long?" 48 hours, Hawthorne said, "before irreversible contact." Talek exhaled slowly through his nose. "And what exactly do you intend to do in 48 hours? Hawthorne leaned back slightly, hands still folded. "Save who we can," he said. "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands." Talek's eyes narrowed. "Only thousands?" Hawthorne didn't bristle. "What I used to enter this room," he said, "is not a miracle, it's a scalpel. Extremely precise, extremely limited. We can phase individuals, small groups, every cycle. Triage, not evacuation." Talek nodded once. That tracked. Elegant, brutal, honest. "And the rest?" Talek asked. "The rest depends on what happens next," Hawthorne said. Talek studied him. "Union Hall is already moving," he said, making it a statement, not a question. "How?" Talek demanded, "when by your own admission this just crossed into confirmed space?" Hawthorne's gaze flicked briefly, unfocused, not evasive. "Processing. Union Hall doesn't run on linear consensus," he said. "Think less command network, more temporal mesh." Talek raised an eyebrow. "Some people see problems early," Hawthorne continued. "Some see consequences late. Union Hall doesn't privilege either. Signals propagate to where they're needed, when they're needed. Futures inform presence. Experiences inform preparation." Talek frowned. "You're describing causality violations." "I'm describing prioritization," Hawthorne replied. "The math is ugly, but the outcome is faster response." Talek absorbed that in silence. Around him, the institution he represented felt suddenly slow, heavy, dim. "And civilians?" he asked. "You said civilians are reacting." "Yes," Hawthorne said. "Privately owned ships, cargo haulers, retrofitted liners. People are showing up with anything that can carry bodies." Talek stiffened. "Without authorization?" "Without waiting," Hawthorne corrected. "Big difference." Talek felt the familiar ache of systems falling behind reality. And you're allowing this? We're coordinating it, Hawthorne said. Union Hall flags unsafe routes. Argus Station and our other depots are already pushing emergency refits. Hull reinforcement, life support scalability, nothing exotic, just making ships better at being what they already are. Talek stared at him. You're upgrading whoever shows up. Whoever helps, Hawthorne said. A beat. And if they abuse it, Talek said quietly. They don't come back, Hawthorne replied, and others notice. The room went still again, but this time it wasn't a duel. It was alignment under pressure. You're bypassing us, Talek said. Hawthorne didn't deny it. But you're giving us a way back in, Talek added. Yes. Talek leaned forward slightly. If Council vessels redeploy, openly, visibly, if transponders light up over that system, what then? Then, Hawthorne said, the galaxy remembers why the Council existed in the first place. Talek exhaled. And if we don't? Then Union Hall fills the gap, Hawthorne said simply. The people will still be saved, just not by you. Talek closed his eyes briefly. Protect citizens, coordinate defense, act when it mattered. That had been the founding charter. You're not asking permission, Talek said. No, Hawthorne agreed. I'm offering relevance. Talek opened his eyes. And Argus Station? He asked. Open, Hawthorne said. Any Council ship in range willing to assist gets priority access. Repairs, training, upgrades, real ones. Talek nodded slowly. This is faster than anything we can authorize, he said. Faster than votes, faster than law. Yes. And you're comfortable with that? Hawthorne met his gaze. I'm not comfortable with extinction. Silence held for just a moment longer. I will make the calls, Talek said. Hawthorne's expression didn't change, but something in the room eased. Good. Then let's stop the purge from teaching the galaxy the wrong lesson. Talek paused. And what lesson would that be? He asked. Hawthorne stood, already half somewhere else. That institutions matter less than people, he said, and anyone who forgets that doesn't survive long. Light folded. The study was quiet again, but this time it felt like a place where decisions still mattered.